Hi everyone, welcome to the third session of Android Study Jams. I am Tejas Mane, lead and facilitator of GDSC Triple ITA, and I welcome you all to the third session. In this session, we will explain about connecting to the internet, how you can connect to the internet and get data from a source or a server. Let's start this session. This session is divided into two parts. First part, I will explain about connecting to the external source or a server and how to fetch the data and display in your Android app. This is the second pathway from the fourth unit, which is get data from the internet, I think. Uh, and The coroutines part will be explained after the first session. This will be taken by Vedant Tamre. I hope you all are doing the course and earning your badges. Welcome back and congrats, you have reached till here. This session will cover the fourth topic, connecting to the internet, and I will explain the second pathway, get data from the internet. So what is the learning objectives of this session? So you will get familiar with the REST or HTTP. What is REST? What is HTTP? I will explain in detail in coming slides. You will get to learn about how to retrieve and display images over the internet with HTTP and REST. You will also use some third-party libraries like Retrofit, Coil, or Moshi library. And lastly, we'll learn about data binding and binding adapters. These objectives are only specific to the second pathway. Now onwards, whatever I'm going to explain, it's about the second pathway, get data from the internet. I hope you have gone through the unit 4 and you know what to expect and what are the contents of this unit. Concept overview. In the Code Lab 2, we have these specific points like REST web services, what is REST, and how we can fetch data using a third-party library, Retrofit. We'll also do a JSON parsing so that the JSON object coming from a server can be fetched to a Kotlin object. And for this, we will use Moshi library. Then there is a library called Coil, which will be used for loading the images we are getting from the internet into the image view. And also a part of data binding, uh, we will use binding adapters to update the UI from code. And lastly, we'll display all these images in the recycler view. So yeah, let's get started. First, about little bit about why should we do this? Like, why should we get data from internet? So, for example, take a weather app. You all have weather app in your devices. So, first, there are two types of app. Like one which is static, like a calculator app, and second which have a dynamic data or which pulls a data from a server. So, for example, you want to build a weather app and you have hard coded every information in the app, like you want to have a display temperature at Mumbai. So for example, temperature at Mumbai is 25 degrees Celsius and you have hard coded everything. So this app will not tell you the weather data about any particular location at any particular time. So what can you do? You can fetch this data from the internet, from the server, using APIs. So every time you open the app, you will get the latest data at any place. So without API, you have to place the temperature sensors at every point in the world, and you have to get the data from the sensors every time. So this is a very time-consuming and costly process. So APIs simplify these things. You can use Weather API to get the data and display in your phone. Second point, as I mentioned, take advantage of services already available. So Weather API is already available. So you don't have to place your own sensors everywhere. You can use this service provided by someone to get the weather data and show in your app. This will save your time and your efforts also, because you don't have to configure the hardware sensors with your software part and all that. You just have to pull the API, pull the data, and show it in your app. Yeah, so a weather app. For example, your phone is a client and there is a server which has all the data regarding every place and its weather conditions. So you want to fetch this data to your phone, to the client. So what will you do? You will request this data to the server. So what kinds of request you can make? There are four kinds of request: get, post, put, and delete. To understand this, let's take an example of Instagram. So whenever you open Instagram, a get request is performed. So you get all the related post from your newsfeed in the app. Then the post request. Whenever you create a post or you add a story, a post request is performed because you are adding a data to the server. Then put request. If you edit the caption of your Instagram post, then it considers as a put request because you are modifying the data which is actually present in the server. And next, delete method. You are deleting a post, so it's deleted from the server also. So it's a delete request. And how do you get this data? As a response. So server send back a response to the client. So client will know, yeah, this is the data and I want to show this data. And this response basically comes in two forms: XML and JSON. So you all are familiar with XML. Your layouts file in Android are in XML language and also XML format, and JSON, we will explain the JSON later. So the request codes, there are a range of request codes. You can see here 200 to 299. It is a success is a request code. Means whenever you get a request code between these values, it assumes that it is a success code. Then 400 to 499 client errors, 500 to 599 server errors. You often see error 404 when you try to access a website. So this is basically a client error, and this 404 is HTTP request code sent by a server. So now a REST. What is REST? A REST is representational state transfer. It is a client server based architecture as defined in this image. A client is here and this is the server. All the resources in the REST are exposed by URIs. So if you want to fetch an image, then every image has an URI associated with it. So you can fetch this image using that URI, particular URI. So now let's explore some REST APIs. I hope you have gone through the Mars app, Mars Photos app. Okay, I think you are able to see this window, right? Insomnia.
Yes, they just go.
Yeah, so if we go to this particular pathway, get data from internet, this is a second code lab, I guess. So go to the sixth topic, and yeah, here they have provided us with a base URL. So what is base URL? Basically there are base URL, then the path. Base URL is same for all the requests, and then comes the path. Whatever you want to achieve, like you want to get something, there is a separate path for every data available. So we can test this path in applications like Insomnia. There is other applications like Postman also. You can also test your APIs. So these apps will help you understand how the request is, what parameters and headers are required in the request, and what is the response like. So let's perform a request. So copy this base URL. This is a base URL, and we want to get the Mars images from this particular API. So let's see the path. See, you can see here, in this case the endpoint is called photos. So the endpoint for getting the photos is photos. So let's append this slash photos, and it is a GET request. And when we send this request to the server, you can see the data generated. This data is sent back from the server. I guess you can see this square bracket here. This means it returns a list. So JSON, this is a key, and this is the respective value of that JSON. So you can see by clicking on any image URL. Yeah, this is the image. So like this, the APIs work. So we will implement this particular endpoint in our app, and we'll display all these images using their URL in our app. Okay, so let's go back to Android Studio. So I'll explain you this pathway in detail, starting from this. So I hope you have downloaded this starter code, and let's see what are the different topics here. So see here, we want to use a retrofit library for calling this API. Retrofit is a third-party library, so we have to include their implementation and dependencies in the build.gradle file. So you can see here in this app level Gradle file. Yeah, this is the dependency I have added to use the retrofit. If you don't add this line, Android Studio won't identify the retrofit classes, and you won't be able to use the methods in this particular library. So after adding necessary dependencies, so whenever you want to use any third-party library, add the dependency in Gradle file. Let's say connecting to the internet. Okay. So here we are basically creating the API client in our app. So if you see this class Mars API service, so first it is a base URL. So in every API, whether it is a weather API or any other, they will provide you with the base URL and respective paths to get the particular data. So this is a base URL we have declared here, and then see this. This is a retrofit object. So this retrofit will be responsible for calling the APIs, and the interface here, Mars API service, we have named it Mars API service. In this interface, we define how we are going to talk to the API service, like what are the different operations we want to perform, and the data we want to receive from the server. So we have declared one method get photos here, which will return us a list of Mars photo. So what is a Mars photo? You can hold the control button and hover over the class name to go to that particular file. So you can be yeah, sure. Mars photo class, it is a data class. Basically, what is a data class? So it's a class to hold a data, and it requires at least a single parameter in the constructor. So we have passed two parameters here, ID and image src URL. So how do we know what to pass in the constructor? So as I have shown you this API response in the Insomnia, here you can see that this is a list, and every object in the list contains two parameters. First is ID, and second one is image src, means the URL of that particular image. So these two parameters are declared in the Mars photo object. So the main advantage of using these softwares is you will get to know about the response of API, and you can define your classes accordingly. So here we have defined a string called image URL and ID. And next, it is an object Mars API. uh, why it is written object here? Object means it is a singleton object declaration, means only one instance of this particular Mars API will be created throughout the app, because we don't want to have multiple instances of this, so we declare it as an object. Yeah, this is the object declaration I just explained you about. Okay, next, call the web service in the overview view model. So if we go to this particular view model, I think you all are familiar with what are view models and why should we use view models. Okay, so see this line, you will use view model scope to launch the coroutine and make the retrofit network call in the background. Why we have to make this call in the background? So for example, we are fetching a particular data from a server, so we need an internet connection. So if we don't have an internet connection, the request will fail. And because we are getting data from internet, it depends, the time depends on the speed, network speed, and other parameters. So we should not freeze our UI while getting the network request or getting the data from the server. So we have to perform it in the background so that our UI is responsive while we are getting the data and showing it to the UI in the background. So you can see the function here, get Mars photos. This function is responsible for getting the data into these particular values, and this is the coroutine scope, view model scope dot launch. In this scope, we are performing the network request. This is where we are getting the data from this particular API. So Mars API dot retrofit service dot get photos. Where is the get photos? Yeah, we have defined this here, get photos, and what it returns, a list of Mars photo. So if we go to the overview model, we are storing this data into photos dot value. What is photos? Photos is a mutable live data object which contains list of Mars photos, like whatever list we are getting. For example, see here, this is a list. So this list will be stored in this object photos. And what is status? Status is, you can see here, loading, error, and done. So whenever we start the request, the status will be loading, and when the request is successful, we will update the status to done. And if there is something error, this try catch block. Try catch is basically we will try to implement this and run these lines of codes, and if there is something wrong, if the network connection fails or any server side error, it will go to the catch block and the status will be sent to error. So basically this is all about this view model. So what are we doing in the view model? We have declared two variable called status and photos, and after performing request, we have updated the status and updated the photos object with the list we are getting from the server. So next, add internet permission and exception handling. So what are permissions? To protect the identity of protect the privacy of Android user, Android have the permission. You often notice that whenever you install an app, and you want to perform some operations like it requires a camera access. So it will ask you for the permission to give the permission to use the camera or to access the files or to make calls. So these permissions are required. So whenever you want to perform any particular operation, you have to define your permissions in the manifest file. You can see manifest file here. I have declared the permission uses permission internet. So without this, your app will not run because we are connecting to the internet. This is a must. So if we run the app now, okay, let the Gradle build. Meanwhile, we can move further. So this is basically, yeah. So you can see here what they have done is they have placed a text view at the fragment, and whatever the response we are getting from the server, that displaying the string format of it in the text view. So instead of doing all this to know the format of response, use this software to test your APIs and get the response, so you can format your objects accordingly. Yeah, I think the app is launched successfully. So now we are able to fetch the images. So let's see if we remove this internet permission. I have commented it out, and if I run the app, the app crashed. I hope you all have seen it. The app is not opening and it's crashes. The Mars photos keep stopping. So if we go to the run tab, this is the error we are getting. So yeah, you can see here permission denied, missing internet permission. So it's very important to define the permissions you are going to use, so your app will not crash like this. Without permission, you can't access any data. So now I have restored the internet permission and it's working fine again. Next, parsing the JSON response with a Moshi library. So till now we are getting the response in this. So if we want to convert it into a Kotlin object, we will use Moshi library, which is a JSON converter. I have defined it here, and it is a Kotlin JSON adapter factory is passed to this. And you can see the converter factory is added to the retrofit object. So the retrofit can convert the incoming response from the server to the uh, object as described here. So basically this will convert the response into list of Mars photos. So we can use this in our app. Again, the similar things, adding the dependency because it's a third-party library. Then the data class, I already explained you about the data class. And then we have updated this retrofit object with the converter factory, and yeah, so it can this method can convert the incoming response to the list of objects. So I guess that's all from this pathway. So next we will see this load and display images from the internet. This is third code lab from the get in and display data from the internet pathway. So in this we want to display the images we are getting from the server. So we will use coil library for the same. Again, it's an external library, so we have included the dependency here, coil, and how to use this. So updating the view model. Yeah, so we are using live data for the same because it will help us to update the UIs also. And I hope you are familiar with the data binding. Data binding basically binds the views to the code and code to the layout file in both ways. So you can update layout from the code also. So using the binding adapters. So you can see here the binding adapters file. This binding adapter will basically do what is it will bind this property image URL with this function. So if we see where is the image URL, you can see here in the grid view item where we have defined our image view. This image view is responsible for displaying this particular image. So you can see here a property called image URL, which gets the yeah, it is set to the photo dot image src URL. So what is a photo? This variable is defined here in the data part. So you can see variable photo which is of type Mars photo. So you can click on this and see, yeah, so this is the photo object which is a Mars photo basically, and we're accessing photo dot image src URL which is defined here in the constructor. So what we are doing here is for a single photo we are accessing its URL and setting it as an image URL, and this property is defined in our binding adapter, and the actual operations are happening here like image view dot load. So what this function is doing is it has two parameters, one is image view and a string. So this image view is present in this grid view item, and then we are setting this image view to load this particular image URL. So where from where we are getting this image URL, again this particular property here. So from here we are getting the URL of the image, and from this property we are setting it in the code part. So this is where we set the URL. Placeholder is basically till your image is loading into the particular view, something animation or image is shown. This is called loading animation, or this is called placeholder. And if the image is damaged or anything error happens, the error image will be shown. And similarly, there are other bindings like list data binding. You can see here the list data binding in this file. So what is list data binding doing? It's basically submitting the list we are getting from the server to this recycler view. So you can see here adapter dot submit list and data. And what's this data? We are getting this data from view model dot photos. Where is photos? Hold control and press here. We have declared the photos in the overview view model file, which is a list of Mars photos. So I think you all are understanding, and similarly the API status works. At the end I will also explain the summary of all these operations, so you will get a better understanding at the end. So this is a grid layout, so we want to show it in a grid. This is a grid of 2. So let's see what we have to do here. In the layout file you can see a property called layout manager, which is set to the grid layout manager. So it will display these images in the format of grid, and there are other layout managers also, for example linear layout manager. So if we define it as a linear, you can see the photos are only in a single column. It is not a grid. So this is used to change the appearance of this recycler view. a grid layout or a linear layout manager. So yeah, this is the property I explained in the image view. Image URL refers to the image URL in the Mars photo object. Error handling in recycler view. This is the status part. Uh, I already explained this part. Like you can see in the overview model, we have updating the status. If the response is successful, update to the done, and if it is error, update to error. And this is a live data uh, object, so it will reflect its changes into the particular layout file. So where it's happening, again in the binding adapter you can see the status. If the status is loading, then set the image to the loading animation and set the view as visible. View dot visible means the view will be visible on the screen. If it is error, again show this view and set to error. And if it is done, like if it is successful response, uh, we can we can hide the particular image view which is showing the status. So that's all from the Mars app. So I'll just explain you all through a diagram. I hope you all are able to see what is written in these boxes. Vedant, is it is visible?
You might zoom in a little bit, but it is visible on laptop.
Okay, let's see if I open the file. Okay, now.
Yeah, better now.
Okay, so let's explain this all, learn about this Mars app, how the data is coming and how we're displaying it in the layouts, because we are not seeing any methods like we are setting a particular URL to the particular view. So it's a little confusing how all these things are working, how live data is working, how bindings are working. So this is the structure of our app. We have a data class Mars photo, which is ID and your image URL. Then overview view model, which contains status, which will be used to display the API status, and the photos. It is a list of Mars photos which we are getting from the server. And in the init block, we are calling the get Mars photos. You can see it in the overview model. This is the init block. This will be called whenever the view model is initialized. So it is calling this function, and this is the function. And finally, in this function, we are calling get photos method to the API by retrofit. And again, in the fragment, we have instance of view model, as you can see here, overview fragment. We have declared view model here, and binding variable also. And then we have a photo grid adapter. This is the adapter which will be used for recycler view to display the content. Then if we go to this photo grid adapter file, so hold control and click. So this will open this adapter used in recycler view. This is, I think, covered in unit 3. So let's see here. Mars photo, we are getting a photo for that particular position and we are binding it to the view holder. And then these are the binding adapters. I already explained you about this in the adapter files, this annotation and this particular value. And finally, the two layout files. First, let's see overview fragment overview. So what are the contents here? In the data section, we have one variable called view model, which is this overview view model. And in the layout section, we have two views. First is recycler view, This is the recycler view. And second is status, which is the API status we want to display. And in the grid view item layout, this is the grid view item layout. We have two data items, view model itself and a photo object, which is the Mars photo type, and image view to display that particular image. So to make things clear, in the fragment we have a recycler view and status image view, and in the particular layout file we have the image view where we want to load our image URL. So what's happening first, whenever the app launches, the fragment will be created and it's resumed on the screen, and then a view model is initialized. So this is the first step. So after initializing, the init block is called. So after the first step, the get Mars photos will be called. It is then it will call this get photos method by retrofit, and it will fetch all the data from the remote server, and it will load the data into the status and into the photos. So at third step, we have all the list of our Mars photos in the photos variable, and we have the status as either of the three, like loading, done, or error. So at stage 3, we have all the data in our app. So next we want to display this data. First we want to convert this to appropriate format, and then we want to display this. So how can we do that? See here, the fourth step, whenever a adapter is created, the adapter will bind that particular Mars photo and execute pending bindings. So execute pending binding is you can say like it's a refresh. So the binding is changed. So you want to refresh that particular part. So it will show this changed binding. And in the binding adapters, you can see the first binding adapter is to image URL, which is declared in the grid view item. So this URL is mapping to this particular property image URL in the image view. So we are getting URL from this binding. Next, we are getting the data from this second binding into the recycler view. And third, we are getting the API status from this third binding into the status image view. So in short, what's happening? We are getting the data from server, then the data is loaded into these variables, and after the initializing of adapters, and initializing of this binding variable, these bindings are generated, which will map this URL to this view, list to the recycler view, and status to the status image. And in these functions, we define their how will they function, and what is the like how we can map this data to this particular layout files. So like this we can achieve the getting data from internet part. So as you can see here, yeah, that's all from this pathway, I guess. There is an amphibian app also, but I think you all can do this by yourself. No need to explain this. They have given all the instructions in the code uh, wise and clear. So you can see the instructions and take help of your previous code labs and do this operation. Also, I will share this diagram. So once you go on through these code labs, you will understand what are the different files and what are their contents, and how actually the flow is going on, like how the data is coming, and how the data is made available to different views to load them. And this is the final app. As you can see, this round animation, it is basically a placeholder, And if we switch on the airplane mode, this will cut all the internet connection. So yeah, you can see this different image. It is a error image as set here. Uh, yeah, these all are the error images, and this is the actual image. So I think that's it from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask now. You should attempt this code lab in order to understand all these things. Once you attempt this particular lab and go through the diagram and whatever I have explained in the slides, I will also share the slides and a recording of the session on Discord. So I think you will be able to get how to get the data from internet and display it using Retrofit. So if there are any questions, you can ask now, or else I will hand it over to the Vedant. So yeah, that's it from the first part, connecting to the internet, how we can use Retrofit to fetch data from a particular server and display it in our app. So next coroutine part will be covered by Vedant. So over to you, Vedant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible, right? I'm audible.
Yeah, yeah.
So, hi everyone, this is Vedant Bhambre. I'm the Android facilitator for from SISGST, and I'll be taking about coroutines today. So, this is one of the major topics. Like this is the one of the most used and most what we say uh, star feature or like star player of the Kotlin. So, let's discuss about it. So, is this not going anyway. So just let's talk about why we need the why do we feel the need of coroutines? So yeah, as they have shown in this example. So just now they just showed you how to what we say fetch images from internet. So this is also same sample app, and here also they have fetched the data from internet, and it is scrolling, and as we are scrolling, we are the images are loaded. So what is happening over here is like the data, like the process of fetching the images from the internet, it is also carried on the main thread. So I'll explain the concept of threading in short. Just consider that there is a thread, and everything we are doing, all the code we are writing or the application we are writing, that is being run on main thread. So whatever the code we are writing for fetching these images, this is being run on main thread, right? So what is happening, like your UI, inflating the UI, making the API call to the internet, loading those photos, and handling user response and everything. And again, there are some few background tasks on the app. Everything is being run on main thread. Okay. So what you can see here is like whenever you are scrolling it, it is like stuttering a lot. It is flickering a little bit, like अटकता है वो ऐसा थोड़ा थोड़ा. So as you can see that it is happening here. So this is where coroutines is introduced. To avoid these problems, if the avoid, you'll need to learn a bit about something called as threads. So for that, before coroutines, I'll talk about threads. So a thread is a okay. So the concept of multi-threading and concurrency. So as I said, whenever you are running some task on only one thread, so like right now, the all the applications that we have built at this point in the course, they are run on the main thread. Okay. So this is like the path of execution of those tasks. So the code for writing, like you wrote the code for activity, like XML file. Then main activity file, you wrote the code for inflating that UI. So these tasks are like executed one by one. So this is the first task executed. This is the second one. This is third. So they are executed in the line. until this task, unless this task is not executed, the second task won't start. So if here is your UI, like inflating the UI, and here is your API call, so it would wait till, and here is like displaying image. So it would wait till all the whole call is made and all data is fetched, and then it would show the images. So as you can see, it takes time and it is also like a laggy a little bit, and you can see the flickering while scrolling as well. So what is concurrency? So consider that right now you were executing all of code in one by one, like in a line. And then there is a concept of concurrency where you can execute the same code, but like on different time, like different threads. So I'll talk about that. So like this is executed, and at the same time this can also be executed, and at the same time this can also be executed. Like there is some time difference because of there might be the need of some other resources or this task or that task. So yeah, so basically the time is reduced by using concurrency, as you can visually see here. So why do we need to use concurrency? As your app gets more complex, it's important for your code to be non-blocking. One more thing that I would like to say, like at this point, the whatever applications we are building, that they are very small and they don't take like much resources. But when you're building like a big applications, very large applications like Udemy or like Zomato or Swiggy or anything, there is a lot of data that is being fetched from internet. So if you do the process of fetching all that data on the main thread, then your app might crash. So it would like run off out resources because there is some certain limit to which the resources are allotted for an app. And if you overload them, then app may crash. So that's the problem that your application might face. And as a developer, you have to take into account those things. So yeah, as your app gets more complex, it's important for you for your code to be non-blocking. So basically, this task should not be blocking the another task. So that is what the concept of non-blocking. This means that performing a long-running task such as a network request, as I said, an API call, won't stop executing other things in your app. So this API call should be done. It should run in background, and as the data we get, it should be displayed over here. So that's how ideally it should be done. And yeah, we'll take it as yeah in this work. We'll just look at some examples. This is also the Kotlin playground that is provided in the app, like in the course. But I'll be using this one because uh, so yeah. So first of all, just see what is a thread. So this is as explained in the first session. For executing any Kotlin code, we have to write the main function, and under the main function, we have to write the code that we are going to execute. Like main function is necessary when you are just running Kotlin. So yeah, here is the thread, and we are running this thread. This is the function provided by Kotlin itself, and yeah. So here we are printing that the current thread, the current thread on which this code is being run on. Okay. So as you can say, this is the thread name, thread and thread -05 main, and that has been run. So that is the print statement that we have got. So thread isn't executed until the function reaches start. So yeah, the thread isn't executed unless this start function is called. The output should look like this. Yeah, it was same. So again, note that the current thread returns a thread instance, which is converted to its string in representation, which returns the thread name, priority, and thread group. So this is the thread name, thread 0. Its priority is 5, and its group, that is it is name. So let's talk about like multiple creating multiple threads. As we said, so this was the representation of single thread. So whatever task you will be running, those would be run on like this if you are running it on single thread. And now we'll be looking into multi-thread. So yeah, as you can see again, these are some. So these are the number of tasks that we want to do. Doing task 1, doing task 2, and then ending, starting, and 2 tasks, and then ending. And we are repeating it 3 times. This is basically like a for loop. there is for loop in Kotlin, and this is like alternative for it. You can repeat repeat anything written in this loop, written under this modifier. So again, as you can see, thread has started. I'll just show it here. So yeah, so 0, 1, and 2, 3 threads have started because we have repeated it 3 times. Yeah, here it says started. So 3 threads have been started, and then it first thread is doing the starting up, then second thread is also doing like and then the third one is also doing. So similarly, every thread is doing the 3 tasks because we have like told it to do so, and there is like this function basically means that after executing this line, it would wait for 50 milliseconds. So yeah, it sleeps for 50 milliseconds and then it goes back to the loop again. So yeah, so as you can see, the order in which the tasks are executed, you can see it is your first, initially first thread is executed, then second, then sorry, I mean first this is the first one, first this is the second thread, and this is the third thread. So the order of execution is different every time. So whenever we will play it here, as you can see right now, it's thread 2, 5 and everything. And if you run, then it will be changed. Okay. So, yeah. Now third thread was initialized first, as you can see, and then second thread again. Yeah, it keeps on changing, as you can see. So that's what the point. So whenever you are doing the work in threads, so basically we never know that what is going to be executed first. Like as we saw here, the order is not order is random. So every time you would run it, it would be different. So that is the actually a problem with threads. So like you are not sure which function would get executed first if you are running multiple functions under one thread. So as I yeah, it's same challenge with threads, and also it requires a lot of resources. This is one more thing. So creating and switching and managing threads like takes up system resources and the time limiting the raw number of threads that can be managed at the same time. So the cost of creating a thread, so it, like instead of the reason why we are using multiple threads is to decrease the load on the OS of your Android, like Android OS, right? But like if you are creating multiple threads or many threads, then they also take up much resources, and then it ends up being an overload instead of a solution. So base conditions and everything, you can read it in the post. It basically means that your resources have been terminated, like overloaded, and thread has gone under rest condition. Like it is too much to handle. Yeah, I'll also show this one. So as you can see, here we are running a few threads. Like there are total 50 threads. We are calling total 50 threads, and we are also incrementing count every time the thread is called, and we are printing the thread number and the count that was called, like whatever the like the current count which is being called right now. So as you can see here, in like in ideal situation, if we are starting from 1 to 50, then first 1, then 2, 3, 4, like that should be called, right? But here you can say that in the concept of threads, the first thread is 40, like the first time 40 number thread is called, and the first count is 38. Similarly, like 40, 39, 39, 38, 40. So like it's like very random and you don't know. And yeah, look at this as well. It has many threads are called the same count, like it's 36, or too many threads. Like these many threads were used to count to just 36. So they were stuck at that for some reason. So yeah, that's the problem. That's one more problem with threads. As I said, it is very random, and yeah, we never know which is going to be called first, which is going to be called second. Yeah, again on the rerun, you can see again the order is changed now. I'll run one more time. Yeah, again it is changed. So yeah, as I said, it is very unpredictable, and it is really hard to keep it up, keep up with it when we are doing some orderly task. So yeah, contrary to what code says, it looks like the last thread what executed first. So as I said that, yeah, 50th or like yeah, see here 50th thread was executed first, and that some of the other threads were executed out of order. So yeah, this is what one way. Yeah, this is just one way. Threads can lead to unpredictable behavior, as I said. And when working with multiple threads, you may also run into what it's called the race condition. Then this is when multiple threads try to access the same value in memory at the same time. So what we saw there right now, like 36, 36, 36, that was basically a race condition. All threads were trying to access the same value. And yeah, this may cause performance issues. As I said, instead of being a solution, it may end up being a problem itself. So okay, let's enter coroutines. Okay, so creating and using thread for background tasks directly has its place in Android. So like yeah, you can use background threads, and like there are solutions to come over with the problems with threads, but there the code becomes too complex, and it is like at that point it is too much code to handle just a simple thing. So in Kotlin, they have made it, they have shipped it with the language itself. So it is a special feature of Kotlin. So it's called as coroutines. And yeah, creating and using threads for background tasks directly has its place in Android, but Kotlin also offers coroutines, which provides a more flexible and easier way to manage concurrency. So it basically enables multitasking, but provide another level of abstraction over simple working threads. So I'll just tell you in short. So what is a job? I'll just explain this thing. A job is a cancelable unit of work, such as one created with the launch function. We would be looking into this as well. So basically, a job is like a task. It is basically a task that a piece of code that is cancelable, so we can cancel it. During in threads, we can't cancel anything once it has started. So that's also one thing. So once you start this, you can't stop it unless it is fully executed. But it in coroutines we can stop it. Like the job is cancelable. Then there is a coroutine scope, functions used to create new coroutines, and like a launch. We will be talking about that. But basically, coroutine scope is like whenever you want to call something under coroutines, then you have to call it under coroutines group scope only. And then there is dispatcher. It allows us to determine the thread the coroutine will be using. So basically, consider that. Yeah, consider that this is a one thread. Okay, and inside the thread, like inside same thread, you can run multiple jobs. Okay, so like I want to make an API call, I want to update the UI, I want to check the for user response. So all that can be done on single thread, but like on different jobs. So and jobs can run concurrently, so it won't be blocking they won't be blocking another each other. So that is what coroutines is basically. Coroutines creates jobs instead of threads, and yeah, we can run multiple jobs on one thread. So it solves the problem of creating multiple threads, because we are only using one thread here to run multiple jobs. So it won't take up that much resources which were needed for creating a single thread. So this is what the main feature of coroutine. Yeah. So now let's see how it is used. So for using coroutines, we have to import it from Kotlin X library. And again, this is the repeat function 3 times. We are calling this 3 times, and we are calling it on the global scope dot launch. So as there are, as I said, you have to call the coroutine. Whatever you want to call under coroutines, you have to specify scope for it, and the scope is basically called as sorry. This scope is basically called as coroutine scope, and then there are number of what we say keywords to define this scope. So there is one called as global scope. Then there would be other like view model scope. We have learned about view model in the last previous sessions. So there is one scope called as view model scope, and then there is third one that is called as life cycle scope. So we also learned about life cycles, about activity. So what basically means is global scope means like it is global. So like in your app, you won't be using it. Like they have also mentioned it here. This won't be used. Uh, Global scope allows in it. Okay, it is mentioned somewhere, but yeah, it would be mentioned when you. So global scope basically means like it is like it takes in like a whole app. So if you define this in whole app, so this scope will keep running unless you exit out of that. Not only background, but you have to completely exit out of it. You have to remove it from recent also. So that so unless you do that, the global scope will be running. And we don't want want it to do that, right? So whenever you would open an app and you would go to the gallery, like Mars gallery screen in that Mars app, then only that what we say task of fetching the data from internet should start. Otherwise, whenever you would be starting app, even if you are going for looking for something offline that it doesn't need internet, it would still try to make an API call to the server, and it would try to fetch the images. So that is not what we want. So we won't be using global scope in the app. This is just for example. And yeah. So as I said, it basically covers whole app, or like cover whole scope of the app, like whole scope of all the code. So that is why it is called as global scope. And launch is a function, like a keyword that is used for launching a coroutine scope. So whatever we write under these curly brackets, that comes under coroutine scope. So we are printing the statement, print hi from, yeah. So we are just basically printing the current thread. So I never run. So yeah, as you can see, hi from, this is the thread name. Uh, this is the name. This whole is name, like default dispatcher, worker 2, coroutine, hashtag 2. This is the thread name. This is its priority once again. Number 5, and this is the what we say group. So this is the main group, and we have ran it 3 times. So again, this is worker 1 thread. This is coroutine hashtag 1, and again worker 2 and coroutine hashtag 3. I said before, right? So like a coroutine creates the jobs on the same thread, and it is very dynamic, and it looks like if the thread is too busy, then it could also start a new thread. So here if you say you can see that this was the thread worker 2, and at the rate coroutine, this was like the second job. You can say that hashtag 2 is second job. Here it might have assumed that in the ID there might be some background processes going on. Then it switched the thread, and it went back to worker 1, and this is the first job, hashtag 1. And it again in the third repeat. So it again came back to worker 2, and it launched a third job, that is coroutine hashtag 3. So as you can see, it it itself figures out on what to run and on what not to. We don't have to worry about managing threads. We don't have to worry about managing those jobs. It would do it automatically, and it would just provide us what the function we want, like provide us the scope for whatever function we want to run. Run it once again, then it would again be different. Yeah, again it is different. It's worker 1, coroutine hashtag 1, 2, and again 1 and 3. So yeah, every time you would run it, it would be different. So that's how coroutine is. Repeat above creates 3 coroutines in the global scope using the default dispatcher. And, dispatcher, as I told you, it is used to define the thread, but we haven't used it here. So it actually comes under the comes with the name of thread as well. Launch function creates a coroutine on the enclosed scope wrapped in the cancelable job. So yeah, this basically creates what we say, whatever we are running here, it is a job and it can be cancelable. This is what the launch function looks like behind the scenes in the Kotlin library. And you can like start and you can look at it. Now let's talk about run blocking. Okay. So next example is which, as the name implies, so it starts a new core routine and blocks the current thread until completion. It's generally used to bridge between blocking and non-blocking code in main function and test. So basically, as I said, coroutines or threads or everything, whatever we are learning it because we want to run tasks concurrently. So we don't want to block threads. We don't want to block the work that is going to be done after this. So that's the reason why we are using coroutines. But there is concept of run blocking. So consider that you want to do something like you want to update that value before the next function is run. So like you have to wait for it. Like you compulsory have to wait for it. And so for that, using coroutines, obviously you can do it like in the basic simple thread as well. But if you want to do it with coroutines, then there's something called as run blocking. So whatever you would run under this code, it would wait for it to be finished, and then the next function would be executed. Here we are getting a date. We are getting some random number, and there is a delay of 3000, and that is delay of 3 seconds. So as you can see, run blocking was called under, it was called under loan run blocking. And first we got the num1 is equal to get value. So we got the value, and so here we have logged the whatever what is happening. So whenever this will be called, ideally it should first print entering get value, and it should print time, and then it should wait for 3 seconds. Then it should leave the get value like this function, and then it should return with the uh, random number. Okay, so that is how ideally it should happen. And in run blocking also, you can see that first while we were calling number, so it entered the get value, then it left the get value at this time and at this time, and then again for number two, it again entered and it again leave, and we got the numbers, some random numbers, and this is the addition. Now this was run blocking. As I said, it would wait. So unless this is executed, the next function won't be executed unless this is executed. So it would wait for this to finish, then this would be run, and then this would be run. But if you check now without run blocking, see the action replace the main, yeah, all the other code with the following. So people who are coming from like JavaScript side or web development, they might know what is async. So we are basically making it asynchronous. So it would run according to what it finds suitable. So this is you can imagine that as a coroutine scope. So yeah, wait for 3 seconds. Yeah. So now as you can see here, we called the num1 use async to get the value. We ran the get value under async, so it acted like as a coroutine scope. So yeah, so now as you can see, uh, it entered the it entered the get value at this time. Then for num2 also it entered the get value, and then it left on the get value function, and again for num2 again it get returned, like exited out of the get value. So as you can see, it didn't execute in the order, right? So ideally it should have been entering, then leaving, then again entering and leaving. But the order has been changed. I guess if we run it one more time, it would be different. Yeah. So yeah, basically that is what I wanted to say. Like order is different whenever you are running it under coroutine scope. And Yeah, launch and async. These are the two words that can be used to launch a coroutine scope. So yeah, that is what async was used for. So the two calls to get value. Just a minute. So consider this like I haven't talked about this suspend modifier. So if you want to run some function, like you have defined some function that you want to run under coroutine scope, so it should be marked as suspend. So what it basically means is, yeah, so you may have noticed the get value is the reason that is that it was delay. So delay is a function. It is a what we say coroutine function because it what we say it runs concurrently. I'll just explain. So whenever you want to launch a function, like run a function under the coroutine scope, so like consider that you want to, so this async creates a coroutine scope, right? So if you want to run some function under coroutine scope, then you have to mark that function as a suspend. If you use delay or something else here, like delay and these functions are already what we say coroutine functions. So in the backend, like this is the method that is provided by the Kotlin itself. So in the backend, like in the Kotlin library, this is already defined as a suspend function. But whenever you are writing some custom function like this, like get value, then you have to mention it that this is a function that has to be executed under coroutine scope only. And whenever you would mark it as suspend, it won't run on in the normal scope, like in the like if you try to run it here, it won't run. Give some error. I try to run it now. Yeah, yeah suspend function get value should be called only from a coroutine or another suspend function, as you can see. Uh, so it tells us that we either should make this function suspend, like main function as suspend, or we should call this under a coroutine scope. So run blocking, this also creates a coroutine scope. So we are calling it under this, and async also creates coroutine scope. Yeah, if you run it under this, then it won't be giving an error. So that is how suspend key modifier is. And we won't be marking main as a suspend because then yes, it would run, but it shouldn't. Yes, so I guess it runs, but it shouldn't be because we don't want main function to be called on different threads. It should be called on main threads. So moving forward, yeah, okay, that was the what we say basic concept of coroutine. One more thing that I would like, yeah. So basically, your app, whenever you are launching an app or anything, the Android will. So you have FPS, right? So many of you might know like what is the FPS of your mobile. So it is either 60 hertz or 120 or 90 60. Like people use it that way. And so what we say is like operating system. So yeah. So this works. So basically, your mobile, like it generates each and every frame on your app. So like it basically keeps building the layout that you have defined. It keeps building the whole screen at this rate. Basically, at this rate, 60 frames per second. So that is the FPS. So it basically like it updates. So one frame like it basically takes less than 16 milliseconds. So this work is done on main thread. Okay. So main thread, or it was also called as UI thread. In some cases, it is different. UI thread and main thread may be different, but it is usually the main thread and what we call as UI thread. So they are used interchangeably most of the times. So this is what UI thread is. Its work is to keep your app running, and so make it visible. So keep it visible to user. So it for that it keeps recomposing the screen at 60 frames per second. So it displays that screen to you at that speed, or 120 for few mobiles as you are using it. So this is what the work of UI thread is. So you can imagine that it is very resourceful, like it takes up way much resources. And like consider that you are trying to run now API calls, you are also trying to do some calculations, you are also trying some heavy tasks like reading a database or something. You are doing those tasks on this thread, the thread that is specially built for, like specially used for inflating the layout and display. If you would do that, do those resourceful tasks on this thread, then you would see frames drops and fluctuations, and like the laggy nature and the UI might be unresponsive. So this is why the coroutines are used, and this is why like API calls and making calculations and everything, it is done on different threads. So we only get that data from those threads, and we only supply it to main thread, and then main thread would do the work of only displaying that data or to the user on the layout. So yeah, that was one of the point that I wanted to stress. This is like the major reason why we use coroutines and why we talk about multi-threading and concurrency. So yeah, that was it. There are examples to practice on your own, and there is some solutions and like the solution of your previous exercise. And yeah, again, you can go to summary and everything. And for learning more, you can go to these documentations. Yeah, these are all documentations of thread, coroutines, and yeah, you should definitely read this one, App Performance, Managing a Long Term. Yeah, one more thing. Dispatchers, as I told, it lets you select the thread. So if you want to run something specifically on your thread, like it must be like you got the data right now and you want to update it to the main thread. So you got the data from API, now you want to display it on the display it to the user. And as I said, UI thread is managed by main thread, or like it is usually they are used, like usually they are same, UI thread and main thread. So now you want to give the data to UI thread. So then you would switch your context. So like currently you were in another, like consider that you were in thread number 1 and now you want to switch to main thread. So you would use this keyword like with context dispatcher dot main. Here you would use main, and then under this what we say curly braces, then you would write the code to update the UI because you got the data from over here. So that is what dispatcher is used for. So main is the, as I said, main thread. IO means basically it means input output thread. This is used for taking inputs and taking out, giving outputs. Like in network also, so this is used. And there is one more thread, I guess, but it is not usually used and it is not talked about also. So these are only the two main threads. Yeah, third one is default actually. Default is like whatever that default thread is. Like if it is main thread, it is UI thread, then it takes up that. So instead of main, you can also write a default. So yeah, those were that is about dispatcher, and you can also read about best practices and everything, how to use it responsibly. And yeah, I guess that was it. Hope you have understood why we use coroutines, why we need the feel of using it, and hope you have understood what coroutines exactly. So if you have any questions, I'm still here, and I'll be taking your questions for next 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box or in the Q&A session, like the Q&A chat differently available for. So I would like to say that recording for this session would also be provided, and yeah. So if you have, if your friends or you have also missed something or you joined late, then you can go through the recording as well.